going to summer school. Summer school. Ooh, where the kids are cool.
Well, I wanted to ask you what the what after Clone Wars came out and everything, like how has being a creator of a feature-length Star Wars project made you feel about Star Wars? Are you just like really possessive about the Star Wars franchise? I don't mean in a bad way, but I mean like,
No.
Are you very protective of the franchise because you love it, or because you work on it, or both? Or how has that been shaped now that it's part of your career arc?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I, like Robert, was an old school, first generation Star Wars fan. I was someone as a child who loved Star Trek. I was a fan of Star Trek before Star Wars came along, and Star Wars came along, I became a bigger fan of Star Wars. But I've always loved both of them, and to me, each franchise sort of scratches a different itch, or fulfills a different need. And Star Wars has always been a more sort of visceral and emotional experience, where Star Trek, generally speaking, is more of an intellectual.
Sure.
And I think they can, live off each other very well, and I enjoy both of them. As far as getting the opportunity to work on them, obviously, as a huge Star Wars fan, it was an incredible dream come true to have the opportunity to work on.
And did it live up to your expectations, or did it end up becoming more perfunctory because it was a job, or?
Oh no! It's every time I've had the opportunity to write a script for the series, I've seen it as it's a treat. I'm so excited in ways that I'm not usually, but oftentimes not. I feel very fortunate to be able to work in this business and do what I do, and I get to write stories for superheroes and stuff for a living. It's great fun.
And in the stable of other writers that are doing what you do you find that most of them are devotees of the franchises in the same way that you are, or are many of them phoning it in, or how does that work?
I think we're all fans of this stuff, and I think it would be hard to maintain a steady career in this field without having that genuine love and respect for the material, and we're all trying to do the best work we can. And yeah, I think getting the opportunity to work on Clone Wars, I get defensive and possessive of it because it's important to me and it's been very fulfilling. And, there are, like with anything, there are things that maybe you wish had been done differently, and by the same token, there are things that turn out better than you expected they would turn out. So I just think it's been terrific to work on. And
well, we're proud of you. It's nice knowing someone who
Season
works
1
on the
coming
Star
out on
Wars
Blu-ray
franchise.
this fall. Can't wait.
I was excited to get the Blu-ray of Clone Wars just to see your name on the back of the jacket. The feature.
It
I
looks
saw
great.
it in theaters. I
With
can
the
say it was mean to a lot of
lenticular-
kids.
And it was I gotta say, it was a very exciting thing, the build up to the movie coming out, and then it was absolutely savaged in the press.
yes.
I mean, I can't tell you how painful that
How much of
experience
that do you think was just lingering resentment over
I
the
think,
trilogy?
to be honest, I think the film is okay. It
Yeah, I
serves
liked
its
it.
function. It's enjoyable. Was never really, while it was a multi-part, it was conceived as a multi-part story for the television series that was then edited together into a movie at not the last minute, but it was never conceived as a self-contained motion picture to begin with. So there's a little bit of that patchwork quality to it, but and it wasn't very expensive to produce, so it's really it was hard. It was tough to see those comparisons to WALL-E or Kung Fu Panda.
Right.
These are films that have budgets that were literally 20 times what the budget of Clone Wars was.
And now you have 2 young nephews too, right? So
Yeah.
how does
I
that...
have 4 now that I've been
right,
two more.
right,
and I just got married.
So does that? I mean, we talked about how George Lucas is having his life being invaded by the young changed the shape of the work that he did. Is that something you think about when you're writing?
Well, I introduced in part. Well,
and I'm sorry for turning this into it.
No.
I'm gonna have the world meet Mr. Stephen Melching here.
No,
I think you two should get some cigarettes.
My nephew Calvin is about to turn 3 years old, and his dad, Dan Weber, who's also a television writer on Futurama and things like that.
You're now related to Dan Weber.
Yes, he's my brother-in-law.
Cool.
He is a big nerd too. He would be very much at home on a panel.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
and a big Star Wars nerd.
Huge Star Wars nerd. So the two of us together. He was out of town today. He wouldn't have been able to tape today. But
He's in Boston.
We both introduced him Calvin, our nephew, to Star Wars, and he loves it because the original Star Wars, A New Hope. I always call it Star Wars. You know, now it's Episode
Which you
4.
should.
It's always Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those films, as you said, they really are fairy tales at their heart for children. That's modern myth making, you know, and it draws on those mythic things that really speak in large part to children,
Right.
and children can connect to those stories in a way, on a very primal level, and I think you could say that's very important to the development of the psyche. I mean, those myths have always served
absolutely.
the function, whether it's the Greek and Roman myths or the biblical myths, or you know, those things help us develop as people and develop our sense of identity and our sense of right and wrong and all that. And I think it serves a very important emotional function, where something like Star Trek might serve a very important intellectual function that makes us think about what the possibilities of the future are. Or
And I don't know what you guys did. As children, did you guys all, like, when you chose characters to play with, did you ever want to play the bad guy, which I think is actually more popular with kids today, which is maybe why the Anakin thing, like the fact that he ends up becoming a bad guy is appealing to
I
children.
spoke to
Like,
myself in an evil voice in the mirror.
yeah?
Yeah.
Was it derisive to yourself or to the rest of the
foreign
world?
accents.
I see.
I forget why, but
I
I
didn't
only
have many
had
friends.
Darth Vader, the Stormtroopers, and the Death Star playset, so I
Nice.
only did
Yeah,
Tales
see,
of the
okay.
Death
Well,
Star.
you know,
Well, actually, though, can I go back to something? The first trilogy, yeah, it's that great myth thing. I'm always surprised the kids like the prequel trilogy, because it seems, personal opinion, it loses that myth and gets bogged down in all the sort of political minutiae.
it's the destiny of Anakin Skywalker. I think children, this generation that came to it as children, saw Anakin Skywalker, who's someone who's sort of a peer of theirs, who gets to, in a way, I mean, when we were children, Luke Skywalker was our entry character. He was the kid we all aspired to be. And, you know, we could get into all kinds of crazy marketing stuff, which, you know, do kids identify more with older kids or younger kids, whatever. But I think this generation of fans connected to Anakin Skywalker.
And I think if you saw that in a flowchart, just what happens in the 3 movies, that it's very compelling. It's just there's so much need to go in and excise all of that talking. I mean, I just remember thinking, like, the midichlorians introduction into the storyline was so just unnecessary and
You could
just
argue
sterile,
that the two
you know?
trilogies are very different in a
Yeah.
fundamental way. The original trilogy was a science fiction fantasy and mythological story. The prequel trilogy is really more of a science fiction story, because it's dealing with a lot more sort of intellectual things.
Well, it's
and-
attempting to be anyway.
Well,
like
but
there's-
that's what it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming from a place that's a little more sort of intellectual and science fiction-y.
attempting to do that.
Well, whether or not you believe it's successful or not, I think that's
No,
where a
I
lot
mean,
of it is.
That's a
coming
good
from.
point.
But I'm just saying,
I
like,
don't know, I thought it set up Anakin's arc very well, but then the last movie just had this weird, out of left field, I'll save Natalie Portman if you kill a bunch of kids.
right, and there's younglings.
But
How
he
many
was-
times do you have to say the word younglings in that
Yeah.
movie?
But the thing
Oh,
is,
it sounds like a delicious meal.
Anakin
It
was
does.
was too old to begin the training. You know, here's this poor kid who was born a slave, and he had this emotional attachment to his mother, and was ripped away from his family and taken to live with a bunch of sexless monks on a city planet,
Yeah.
and train with his Jedi friends. But he had this love and this need for his mother. And then that mother was taken away from him, and he transferred a lot of that
Is
onto
his mother
Padme.
Linda Ronstadt in this story? And
No, but he fell in love with the woman in a way that maybe other Jedi are not tempted to do, because that's just not a part of their mindset. They're just not trained.
which
to
I don't
form those
understand, because
attachments.
Shaq T is one hot female Jedi.
Ayla Secura, man.
And wait a minute, are you saying Mace Windu doesn't, get busy on weekends?
It's,
I have a hard
it's
time
hard.
believing
It's
that.
hard to understand why they have to have this monastic life. It doesn't really make sense.
No,
you
it
know?
does, because these are characters that have such tremendous power, and we've seen how destructive emotions can be. We've seen crimes of
How come
passion.
we don't see more of the dark side getting it on, then?
That's a good question. I'd love to see that.
Okay, wait, I got a question.
The
Okay,
dark side after
since,
dark.
Since we're
Yeah.
discussing this, what do the Sith want? Like, I don't understand. You're Palpatine, right? You pull the strings, and you build your armies, and you did the Separatists and all this, and you get everything you want. Then what? Do you have to go fix the plumbing out on
Supreme power?
Bespin? I mean,
Well,
are you going to
what
pay
does
for the
any-
school?
what
Well, that's
does
the
any
classic.
dictator want,
Yeah,
though?
every villain who wants to take over the
Supreme
world.
power.
No, but someone like
What do you
Hitler,
do then?
Saddam
It's a big pain in
Hussein,
the butt.
or Napoleon, or I mean, it's about. I think Palpatine was trying to avenge the Sith's defeat at the hands of the Jedi. He wanted to destroy the Jedi Order, and in order to destroy the Jedi Order, he needed to create this war and subvert the Republic under his heel, and he was basically able to wipe out the enemies of the Sith.
It is still difficult to understand when you're given kind of the lay of the land of the actual technology of Jedi power. How did they not know? I mean, like, that's the idea that, and you're told throughout the entire series, you can't sneak up on a Jedi. You know, anything that happens to them is something they knew was going to happen. It's a godlike, like a
unless you're
Judeo-Christian
as
godlike
powerful.
thing. No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, but are you as powerful if you're one of the stormtroopers who's going to now go and kill all of the Jedi in one fell swoop in the end of the movie? Like, just like that the Jedi can't sense any of that, even when they're close to the most powerful evil
But wait,
force.
they
They're
never
not-
tell
they're not
exactly
mind
what's going to happen. They can tell us something big is coming, but do we ever see the Jedi tell the future?
It's not that. I'm just saying,
Okay.
like, just the sense of a threat. Like, you're under the impression that the reason those lightsaber battles happen with such quickness is because there's a certain ability to anticipate, right? That Luke puts on that helmet so that he can try and carry out the tactics of battle without having to actually see, which means there must be some sense of
I
feeling
guess so,
it.
but it's portrayed as an instinctual feeling thing. Like,
Right.
if you're in the
You're
middle of a
stri-
battlefield,
yeah.
you can tell there's threats around you, but I think...
Well, wait a minute.
It's a sixth sense in a way. That's
Yeah,
not
you
necessarily.
can't tell that it's
Well,
the
and
guys
I'm
behind you
not-
are going to shoot you in
I'm
the
not
back.
saying that they can't be defeated. I'm just saying the way that it's portrayed in the film, they make it seem so expeditious that as soon as someone says, flip the switch, Stormtrooper's going to come and kill all the Jedi are just like, oh, crap. And that's
But
it. It's
they
never...
Can't, they can't. I mean,
I
they
think it
can't possibly defend
But I
themselves
think it
from
would have
30 clone troopers that are suddenly all
But I
shooting
think
at
it would
them
have been
from all sides.
compelling and melodramatic and satisfying to see them try and to see it last for longer than
and a few
3
get
seconds.
away.
Yeah, just to see
I
that.
kind of wanted
mean,
a few to get away, yeah.
But I mean, that's
Well,
and you're left-
I'm sure others.
I mean, in the
did get
movie, I'm
away.
sure some did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm,
Well, for
and
me,
I'm
the
sure that
thing-
we may see some of that in the live
Yeah.
action series that's
The
coming.
thing that never made sense to me is that there's 2 Siths and then the apprentice kills the master. First of all, of course the Jedi are going to defeat you if, like, you lose 50% of your Sith every generation. And then also, it kind of makes Return of the Jedi suck, because we thought Darth Vader overcame his evil side and defeated his master, but apparently Sith are always supposed to kill their master. So one, it seems a real
Well,
boneheaded
but it
strategy.
was the reason he killed his master. He didn't kill his master to assume his mantle and take over the galaxy, which
Yeah.
is what he proposed to Luke in Empire Strikes Back. He did it because he was, he
I guess
returned
it's a
to
good
the light
explanation.
side.
It's still a real boneheaded system, though, that, like, your masters always get killed off. You
I
know?
actually think that scene in Return of the Jedi where we're being led to believe that all of Luke's desire to defend himself and everything, good, like that, all of that, it makes it seem as if even the acts that you choose that are intended to defend yourself or whatever, because they're inherently violent, that's the dark side, which seems as if that would be a very impotent fighting force. The
gets a
Jedi
little-
army would be a completely impotent force. You see them out there fighting all the time. They're not, nobody's going, good. Like, it's not, it doesn't, that whole registry to me
No,
doesn't
but
make
I
any
think
sense.
I think that's subtext of what's going on, and that's explored a little bit in the Clone Wars series. The idea that the Jedi, and they touch on
Can
it
we
in the
get that
films.
on Amazon.com?
Amazon.com coming in November, I think. It's season 2. And it's coming September 15th. Volume 2, Clone Wars, Clone Commandos, featuring.
Going
an episode
Commando?
of mine. Yes, clones going
Sexy.
commando. But
Sexy clones.
what was the point of this? That the Jedi, in becoming, Mace Windu has some lines about this. We're keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
Right.
And by going out there, even ostensibly, they're trying to free planets that are being
Right.
conquered. Or,
I totally get that. I'm just saying, like, that's
but
why.
but they're losing who they are. I think you're right.
But
They're
it's
losing-
always
they're
that's
being
always the
corrupted.
problem
Yeah.
about the war for peace. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you need to fight the war, but how do you do
and
that
this gets
without?
explored in every Vietnam movie, like, where they're, good guys with good intentions go out there and fight a battle and it turns them into monsters. Who
I
rape
think this has
people,
been
so.
explored in some of the comic books and the novels. I don't have specific titles, but I think that's been explored in some of the expanded universe stuff.